The purpose of this gathering is to increase our awareness of the challenges of food and housing security among student members of our campus community, and to engage all of us in our community, students, faculty, staff, administrators, and to mobilize our campus community partners to mobilize a response that will lead to inclusiveness for all of our students with respect to housing and food insecurity, so that we can help meet the needs of our students. We all know that if a student is hungry, they're not likely to do well in class. If a student doesn't have a place to live, that can certainly impact their ability to be successful on our campus. And so when we think about student success, we have to think about everything that a student is experiencing. And certainly this initiative is doing just that. This ballroom is filled to capacity, and I know that people have been accepting the invitation right up till about 10-15 minutes ago. So we know that this is resonating with folks here on our campus. So we have students, faculty, and staff from across the community, from across the entire campus here. So the Division of Academic and Student Affairs, Enrollment Management, Services, Finance and Administration, then all the subunits that are part of those units, and then all of the colleges are represented here as well today too. So thank you all for coming out. National trends indicate that many college students struggle to obtain safe, stable housing, adequate food, despite working one or more jobs and taking out loans. And of course, we want to minimize those loans. But over the last couple of decades, for a variety of reasons, tuition has been increasing. And that makes it harder for some of our students to keep up with their housing and food needs. And certainly, I think, Gene, as you know, student financial aid resources aren't keeping up with the demand in both enrollment nor the demand in need for aid. And so it is a real problem for us, not only here at NC State, but nationally. Because of these challenges, North Carolina State is working to ensure our students' most basic needs are met. And some of the resources available to students on campus will be reviewed this afternoon. So you'll get to see a lot of what we're doing here on campus already. And I'm really proud of the efforts that we've made to date. And I'm really excited about where we can go as we move forward with this initiative. So I'd like to thank each of you here today for participating in this conversation, bringing your passion about this issue to bear today. It's our hope you're going to continue after today to talk about this with folks that aren't here. Spread the word, spread it out on your social media accounts. Keep track of what we're doing in the future, bring more people back with you, because we want to have this to be a truly successful campus-wide conversation throughout this academic year. With that, I'll move to the next phase. I have the honor of introducing the person who's going to be guiding us in this conversation, or our MC as it were, and that's Mike Giancola. And Mike is a valued member of the community with respect to these issues as well. He currently serves as Assistant Vice Provost and Student Ombudsperson. He reports to me, but he doesn't get to tell me much about what he's doing because of that ombuds thing. But he's got a really long record of supporting under-resourced students on campus and in the community at large. He helped to create the Feed the Back Pantry on campus. He's worked extensively with what is now known as Rise Against Hunger, which used to be Stop Hunger Now. And he's led and volunteered with Habitat for Humanity for a number of years and the Fuller Center for Housing in 7 countries around the world. And last year, how many of you remember the Build a Block campaign? Most of you, anyway. Last year, he was a co-chair on the Build a Block initiative, where we worked with Wake Habitat and built 11 affordable townhomes for deserving low-income families. And that 11 is really important because it was one more than Chapel Hill built the previous year. So we hold the record now. So with that, I will introduce Mike. Mike, please come forward and get us kicked off. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
We've got that food thing going on. I want to thank Dr. Mullen for his support and his leadership on many of the issues that we'll talk about today, but also just in general supporting students. He's been a real advocate, and it's great to have his support moving forward. So my job is to help guide the conversation today and really make sure we get out on time. So I'll do my best at both of those. I again want to just reiterate and thank everyone for coming. Lots of folks here we want to acknowledge have been a part of this conversation and other related conversations for many years. I look around the room and I see allies and folks that have been leading really important initiatives as it relates to food and housing security efforts for our students on the campus. So we want to thank you for being here. And also acknowledge for some of us, this may be maybe your first entree into the conversation. We want to welcome all of you here today as we try to move forward in a real collaborative way for the campus. We want to acknowledge this can be a very emotional and personal issue. For some of us in the room have experiencing these issues in the past, maybe currently experiencing them now. And so we want to acknowledge that and also try to create a space where we can talk openly about the issues and how we can maybe come together as a campus to really address them in a meaningful, collaborative way. We do want to acknowledge that we're going to try to jam a lot in a 2-hour period, and there will be opportunities and maybe something will really come to mind or spark your thought process. We want to invite you at the tables. We have some notepads. If there's an idea that just really kind of resonates, write that down. Maybe there's a question. Can we do this? Or have we ever thought of this? Or why aren't we doing that? Please write those things down. The steering committee will take those and use those as guides for this initiative moving forward. So I want to invite you to do that throughout the session today. I also want to acknowledge and thank folks from NASA Communications that are here to videotape the session. They're going to videotape primarily the presentation part of things. We're going to do a few activities where we'll ask us all to participate in discussion. They're not going to videotape that, so folks can feel comfortable sharing at whatever level they would like. But just want to let you know that video is primarily for folks who couldn't be here today. And then lastly, I want to thank University Dining, several who are in the back of the room, and many others that are back of the house, who have really thoughtfully prepared today's menu. And so I want to ask everyone to please recognize their efforts and support. My hope is that we can keep this kind of a light and free-flowing, so if you're hungry, please feel free to get up and get some more food. And if you haven't had a chance to read the little cards to explain a little bit more about the efforts that our chefs and our partners in dining have gone to really prepare a special meal for us today. At this point, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Mary Haskett. Mary is a professor of psychology here on campus, and she's the co-chair of the Food and Housing Security Steering Committee, and she's going to kick us off in the first part of the presentation.
Thank you, everybody. I am so thrilled to see so many committed faces here today. We were hoping to have 50 people involved in this conversation, and we're at twice that. So we're thrilled, and again, I think it speaks to the relevance of the issue. So I was asked to introduce you to this initiative in terms of how we began and what some of our initial goals are. I've been on the faculty since 1990 here, so I'm a long timer. I think it's officially long timer status. And my research focuses on the impact of family stressors on young children's social and emotional health and their development. And specifically in the past 10 years, I've been focusing on family homelessness. And I've been involved in a lot of work at the state level and the national level in terms of policy for families, but I have not been active in my closest and dearest community, and that's right here at NC State. So, like most faculty members, I've been pretty oblivious to the depth of need among our students and the breadth of need. So last year I started asking a lot of questions. I had worked with a couple of students who were deep in the recesses of my memory. I had a student living in his car for a while at the same time that he was doing research in the local homeless shelters. So these are the kinds of experiences I've had over the last 27 years. And decided I needed to start asking questions and doing something about it. I also started thinking about what can a single faculty member do, just one person. Decided to start small, and I was asked to give a couple of these examples just in order to get your brainstorming going or thinking going about what you all might be able to do as individuals. Because I think if each of us did one small step, we would get a huge impact. So last year, after having worked with a student who was doing behavioral observations on a local playground, he was working with me in February, and every day after school I would get him out on the playground with him, and he'd come with no coat in February. And like any good mother, I said, "Where's your coat? Your mother would have a fit if she knew you were out here without your coat on." The next day it'd be the same thing. I'd have the same conversation. Duh. Finally occurred to me to ask him, "Do you have a coat?" He didn't have a coat. So I got that student a coat, and he said it's the first coat he'd ever had. He was raised in a big family, and he said they had a couple of coats that they all shared. So that really sort of stuck with me. So last year what I did was I went down into my basement and I got a clothes rack, and I put the clothes rack out in the hall outside my research lab in Poe Hall, and just sent a message to the department saying that the clothes rack is out there. And I put a sign on the clothes rack that said, if you need a coat, grab one. If you have an extra, leave it. And I wasn't monitoring the coat rack very well, or intentionally, but I counted 50 coats that came left, with very little effort and very little sort of advertising about it. So again, just a small thing that one person can do. With Sarah Wright's support, you'll hear from her in just a few minutes, I also decided to just put a food basket in my office so that when students come and meet with me, I can offer them something as they're leaving. So again, small steps. As I was asking questions about campus resources last year and who do I talk to about this, all roads led to Sarah Wright, who you'll have the pleasure of meeting in just a minute. So last year, Sarah and I began meeting, and she spent the year deepening my understanding of the needs of under-resourced students on campus. And at the end of the year, we decided we need to extend this conversation to the whole campus community. And so we launched an initiative, Food and Housing Security among NC State students. This slide introduces you to the folks who are involved in this initial stage of the conversation, but I would like for all of your names to be on this slide in the spring when we have another conversation as our partners. So the steering committee is comprised of Lindsay Batchelor, who you'll hear from today, and she chaired this event. So she and her staff put this together with her colleagues, including Melissa Green and Rebecca Dunstan, and Carla, last name, Davis. So we thank them for their efforts today. Also on the steering committee is Carolyn Bird, who's chair of the Faculty Senate, Sean Hogue from University Dining. We also have two fabulous student members of our steering committee. Shivani is not here today, but Indira is. And Indira, if you'll raise your hand, thanks for being here. We also have two community members who are on our steering committee, and these are local experts in food and housing. The first is Josh Monahan. Josh, are you here? Yes. Josh is a recent grad from NC State and is now owner of a company called 1 in 6 Snacks. 1 in 6 comes out of the fact that 1 in 6 people are hungry. And so he is contributing a portion of the proceeds from his business, which is Fabulous Potato Chips. And we have actually a couple of packs of his potato chips as door prizes today. So there'll be a couple of lucky winners of some of those very yummy chips. Did I say that he contributes a portion of his sales to the food bank, the local food bank? And then we have Danielle Butler. I know I saw Danielle right here. Danielle is the Executive Director of Family Promise of Wake County, which is a program that serves families experiencing homelessness. And she's also a member of the Raleigh-Wake County Partnership to End and Prevent Homelessness. So thank you both for being here and for joining in this conversation. We have additional members from the community, and I don't have, oh wait a minute, maybe I do. I was counting on having this slide running. Yes, some people I just want to recognize quickly. Alicia Arnold, I hope Alicia is here. Did Alicia make it? Yes. Alicia is Director of Housing and Transportation with Wake County Human Services. Just met with her last week about the 20-year plan for Wake County, and I would like the university to be actively involved in that 20-year plan. We have Erin White, Erin, from the Community Food Lab and the Capital Area Food Network. Gideon Adams. Gideon is with the Central Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. Thank you for being here. And Don Eli, with Wake Interfaith Food Shuttle. Is Don here? Not yet. All right. So this is the vision for our work. And have you ever worked on visions that take like 6 months to develop? This one took us less than 16 minutes because we're so on board and so clear what we're trying for. We hope you guys will share in this vision with us. And this is a living vision, so if we need to make revisions as we move forward, we certainly will. So we had two goals for this semester. One was to have this conversation today. So we're thrilled that we were able to pull this off. The other activity that we wanted to engage in this semester is a survey of our students. So we have a representative sample of 7,000 students that just received a link on Wednesday to a survey. Immediately after launching the survey, we had people taking the survey. And we were hoping for a 20% response rate by the end of 3 weeks. As of right before this meeting, we had 18.45%, counting every little bit. So I think that again speaks to the salience of this issue. Is Nancy Winchell here? Nancy helped us launch it, and I just wanted to recognize her if she's here. We will tell you about the survey when we gather again in the spring. And right now, I want to turn this over to Sarah Wright, who will help us to get on the same page with respect to some of the language and the definitions that we're talking about.
Thank you so much all for coming. If there's anything that I like to do is talk at people about getting the students I work with who tend to be under-resourced, every possible resource they possibly can, but I'm going to try to be as quick as possible. And, whoops, wrong way. So with hunger and homelessness, most people don't have or have never had an experience of using those two words to describe college students. It's actually not a new phenomenon, but recently it has become much more severe and prevalent. That comes from a couple of different economic, social factors, federal and state policies. And so it's got to a point, though, that the higher education community nationally has begun to address it, because there's literally not a campus in this country that hasn't faced the negative consequences of hunger and homelessness on their campus. So food and shelter is part of the basic human needs for survival, but today what we're talking about is the basic needs for NC students to be successful here. So when we talk about basic needs today, it means the basic needs that a student needs to thrive here, not just survive, but thrive. This is usually what we think of hunger, as global, as severe malnutrition. This is normally what we think of for college student hunger, that it's a joke about ramen noodles. However, what we're finding and what many of you experienced is that this is actually severe on our campus, that students not having access to sufficient and nutritious food is causing them severe health problems, is causing them not to be able to perform in the classroom as they're capable of. And what's really sad is that most of them are spending more time worrying about how to find food and not preparing for their future in their career. Now, this is the term we're going to use, is food insecurity, and that's what we tend to use rather than hungry. We use it as a term, but food insecurity has a level, so that what you'll find out is that students' level of food insecurity ebbs and flows over their time here at NC State. But we also know that if our students who have been food insecure before they came to NC State, then they're probably going to experience some form of food insecurity while they're here. And in North Carolina, 1 in 4 children are hungry. So we're going to, as an educator of the state of North Carolina, those students are coming to us. And in North Carolina, we're in the top 10 for the hungriest states in the country. So when you think of these students, it's not a random thing, there's a history of it. This is what we technically think of homelessness. However, actually homelessness is very private. You will never see an act or the visual of a homeless college student. So what we're using here is the housing insecurity. So obviously there's levels of insecurity, and again, that insecurity will ebb and flow as they're here. But many of you are probably going, that's a crock. We have these glorious, luxurious dorm rooms. How can a student not have safe housing when there's a plethora of dorms? How can students not be able to afford housing when they have a full financial aid package. But the federal government defines college student housing as temporary. So when the dorm closes and you don't have a permanent address to go to, the federal government defines you as homeless. Well, there's an easy solution to that: off-campus housing. However, to get off-campus housing when you don't have the resources are literally insurmountable. You have to come up with an application fee, you have to have a credit score, you have to have a co-signer, and many of our students don't have that. So then where do they end up? Couches and cars, and that's students from Texas Tech University. So what the solution is necessarily, there's a couple, but what it comes down to is access to resources. So many people view poverty as the amount of resources that you're using to function. And at NC State, we want to increase the number of students accessing the resources that we have, and then we want to expand upon those resources. So when we talk about resources, it's all of these. So the more resources a student has access to and uses, the more successful they'll be, and the more security they'll have with regard to safety nets. So I know that NC State can do this. We are rich in resources with experts, expert educators, expert leaders, researchers, and compassionate citizens. We're rich with technology, facilities, access to information. And as an institution of higher education, we're rich with opportunities and the resources to educate ourselves as a community and then go mobilize into action. So the more resources our students have, the more safety nets that we'll have. So we won't have students hungry and homeless.
Okay, so thank you to Mary and Sarah for kind of framing our discussion a bit. And as you can see up on the slide, the steering committee very intentionally called this a campus conversation, because we wanted a baseline and just kind of ground our discussion with some discussion and terms and such, but we really are interested in having us have conversation with one another. So at this point, we want to invite you at your table to kind of reflect upon this question. And it could be from a personal experience if you're comfortable sharing. It could be an experience that maybe you've had with a student if you work here on campus, or you're just aware of in terms of the issues of food and housing insecurity.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we continue to lay the groundwork for the conversation that we continue to have on our campus around food insecurity and housing insecurity, I think it's important that we look at the numbers. I'm so grateful for Dr. Haskett and the study that she's working with right now, because it provides the state the opportunity to really understand our students' experiences, to be able to provide them an opportunity to put voice to their experience, their lived experiences. And also, it'll provide us a chance to contribute to the national conversation in understanding what this issue looks like on a national level. There's been more and more research that's popping up over the years. I think we first started to see it happening at the community college level. And so to be able to see more research coming from four-year institutions helps us to better understand what we're experiencing in NC State, because we are seeing trends in this data. So I'm going to highlight just 4 of the studies that have come out over the past 3 years between 2015 and 2016. And I ask you that as I go through these numbers, these aren't just numbers, these are people, these are experiences, and they are very much applicable to our institution here. You'll hear us, Sarah talked about the terms food insecurity and how there are different levels of food insecurity, and so you'll hear me talk about 2 levels. Very low food insecurity, which is defined by the USDA as experiencing reduced food intake at times due to limited resources, and then also low food insecurity, which is reduced quality, variety, or desirability of diet with little or no indication of reduced food intake. And then finally, there's also marginal food insecurity, which is experiencing anxiety over food sufficiency and potential shortage that you might have. So within the UC system, 19% of the students who responded, and I'll say that 9,000 students responded to the survey, which I think says something in itself. 19% were very low food secure, and then 23% low. Food insecure students were more likely than food secure students to receive federal nutrition assistance and also need-based assistance, but they also found that although previous studies have shown that current and childhood food insecurity are related, it's also important to note that this study found that 57% of food insecure students were new to food insecurity. So you have two different populations here that are experiencing it, and we have to figure out as a university how to identify those students and then how to provide them the resources that they need. The next study took place in Illinois, and that study was done at 4 of the different directional institutions there. 1,900 students took that survey, undergraduate students, and they found that 35% of their students were either low or very low in food insecurity. And then next, I'll talk about 2 national reports that were compiled by multiple organizations around the country to understand this at a broader level. In 2016, there was a report that was written titled the Hunger on Campus Report. So 4 different campus-based organizations came together, including the National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness and the Student Public Interest Research Group. Nearly 4,000 students were surveyed from 12 states, 8 were community colleges, and 26 were 4-year institutions. In this study, they found that 48% reported food insecurity in the previous 30 days. 48% of those 4,000 students experienced food insecurity in the previous 30 days. And that food insecurity is not just a community college issue, which is something that from the research, most of the data coming from community colleges, one might think that this is just a community college issue, but it really translates to 4-year institutions as well. 25% of community college students were very low food secure, and 4-year students, the number was 20%. So what does this mean in terms of impact on education? 55% of students reported that they did not buy the required textbook that they needed because they needed to buy food. And I've experienced that this semester with a particular student that I'm thinking of. 53% reported missing class because of their experience with food insecurity. And 25% dropped from a class. So these issues have real academic impacts, and those are just a few. And then finally, the Coalblack Study was another broader study with 4,000 students from 10 different community colleges, and they found that half of all community college students that they surveyed were struggling with food and or housing, and that was another study that was done by 4 different national organizations. So a little bit about the numbers and what this looks like through from the Coalblack Study. Again, as I go through these numbers, think about the students that you work with, think about NC State, and think about how these numbers translate to the students and the community that we're working with on a daily basis. So 43% of the respondents of this study reported not being able to afford balanced meals. 39% reported that food they purchased didn't last, and they lacked the money to buy more. 11% reported not eating for a full day due to lack of money. And this also translates to housing security as well. 18% of the respondents didn't pay the full amount of rent that they needed for the month because they're having to make choices about their resources. 22% did not pay the full amount of utilities that were needed for that time. 32% were hungry but didn't eat because they didn't have enough money or food to meet their needs. And finally, 13% experienced some level of homelessness, and so that was defined as being evicted, staying in a shelter, staying in an abandoned building, just not having a home in general, and not knowing on a particular night where they might sleep. So again, I think numbers are important. They help us to further tell the story, along with the qualitative or the lived experiences that we know from our students. And so I ask you to continue to think about these numbers and to think about just this data in general as you leave today and as you interact with our students, because we know that the issue around food and housing insecurity is often an invisible one. So hopefully this will give you something to think on. Thank you. And next Sarah is going to come up to talk about leading the way.
So Melissa talked about the research done at other universities, and I'm going to speak about what other universities are doing responding to these issues on their campuses. Because it's good to have a frame of reference as to how other institutions are responding to perhaps guide us into how we should respond. So perhaps a lot of you are thinking is we're not a social service agency. This is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to educate, and our students need to have a home and to have a full stomach to learn. And to be honest about it, we're not going to food pantry ourselves out of this. We need to do more than just that. So the University of California, I had the pleasure of meeting the former Secretary of Education this last week, and as he stated in a similar setting, is you know somebody's values by looking at their budget. The University of California offers a chunk of money to each campus each year, and then they have an entire committee or a department that spans the entire campus system. It's the Basic Needs Security Office, and their budget is $3.3 million for 2 years. I'm kind of in the way. It's blowing. Should have right justified it. Sorry. So again, Berkeley with the Basic Needs Office, and they're like the command center. So they are the institution in the place in the middle, and their job is to make sure that there's no wrong door a student can go to for help. So it's not that the student goes to one place, it's that this is the command center for the entire campus. And a program actually in the state of North Carolina offers free housing 365 days a year for foster care students. At UC Irvine, they have an 1,800 square foot pantry where it's full service. And then the University of Wisconsin-Madison supports their students by you want your students to be on campus as much as possible. You want them to be actively engaged. So many of our students have $160 per month that's funded through them with the SNAP benefits, and so we want them to be able to use that money while they're on campus. For faculty, there's a lot that Mary has talked about with faculty, and one of the most popular ones right now is to put basic needs resources in the syllabus. And then for student efforts, there's Swipe Out Hunger, which is active on 20 different campuses, and we actually have a group of students who are currently working on bringing that to NC State. And at UCLA, the students actually created a temporary housing shelter for students where there's 18 beds, and those people get 2 meals a day. So now we're going to talk about what we offer here.
So we actually have quite a bit going on campus related to food and housing security. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes talking through these campus resources. I could probably spend the rest of our time giving you lots of amazing information about all these resources. But I'm going to move through these a little quickly, but I wanted to point you to the fact that there are a few printed copies of these resources on your tables. I emailed this We'll email this to most of you, and we'll be making this available online. So know that this won't be your last opportunity to see these resources. Also, we have a lot of representatives in the room that run these programs and initiatives. And so when I get to your program or initiative, would you please raise your hand so that others in the room can see that you're here represented. So first, our food resources. So Feed the Path Food Pantry is our on-campus food pantry run by students and the Center for Student Leadership, Ethics, and Public Service. And we had a food pantry. Great job, thanks guys. We also have University Dining present here today and Rave Catering, who offers student employment and a free meal with every shift. We have the Food Recovery Network, which is a student organization that currently recovers food from campus dining facilities and is donated to community organizations. We have our campus residence halls that are equipped with kitchens and cooking supplies. We have the More in My Basket program, which is an extension program focused on outreach of SNAP users on how to stretch your food dollars. And we have the Center for Environmental Farming Systems that develops and promotes just and equitable food and farming systems. Our housing resources. University Housing provides temporary and emergency housing options. Pack to Pack is actually an inactive program, but provided under-resourced students with lightly used home furnishings that would otherwise go to local landfills. This is a great program that could be reinvigorated, so I wanted to make sure to mention it. So, financial resources. We have lots of these, obviously. The university provides short-term loans of up to $500 for emergency expenses. Our financial aid office offers a variety of programs and resources to students. The PAC Promise Financial Aid Program provides specific financial assistance to students with demonstrated financial need. Our colleges have emergency funds. The College of Education is the one that I have linked here that I have had access to information for. But there are likely others. And then Financial Literacy Month, education to our students about money management. And so education, tons of these resources. Obviously, we're an Institute of Higher Learning, but these are all really important for students to ensure their success. So our tutorial center provides students with academic assistance. TRIO, that Sarah's a member of, is a federally funded program that helps students overcome class, social, and cultural barriers to higher education. And then their student support services are also federally funded college retention and completion programs. Work Study provides part-time jobs to students with demonstrated financial need. The libraries have several assistance programs, including equipment rental and an alt textbook project. The Fellowship Advising Office helps students apply for fellowships, scholarships, and other funding opportunities, both on and off campus. Undergraduate research helps students connect with undergraduate research opportunities, both paid and unpaid. And OIT also provides technology and interface-related aid to students. And the rest of these are other resources for students that we have on our campus. The Wolfpack-style professional closet helps students access professional clothing so that they can prepare for job interviews. Student Health provides our students with accessible health care. Student Legal offers students free legal services. We have low-cost bus passes to help students have access to affordable transportation in Raleigh. There's a Seeding Food Studies initiative that's developing an academic initiative focused on food systems. And our alternative service break trip that is focused on hunger and homelessness helps students understand that from a national perspective. So lots of resources. As I mentioned, I'm going to be sending these to you. I'm sure I've missed some. We've definitely missed some. So make sure that you share that information with us. And now I'd like to introduce Alicia Clark. She is an NC State undergrad alumna and a current graduate student here at NC State.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Alicia Clark. I'm going to share my experience with you guys today. I am going to try very hard not to get emotional about it. Like like Mike said, these are very emotional issues, and they, a lot of them hit home for me, so I think we can power through it though. So I was a first-generation low-income college student, the first person in my family to go to college, and that came with a lot of uncertainties. I did not know whether my parents would be able to buy me the items I needed for my dorm. I distinctly remember my sisters being very upset that so much money was being devoted toward my comforter, my storage ottoman. It was kind of a battle for those resources. I did not know how I would afford my textbooks. I was also a PAC Promise recipient, which I am forever eternally grateful for, and I was able to use financial aid to get my textbooks, so that really was instrumental for me. But at the time when I was accepted to NC State and had just started, I wasn't sure how we were going to cross that bridge. I was very lucky to be invited to apply for and then accepted into the TRIO Student Support Services program. I was telling Melissa that when I got that application in the mail at the end of my senior year, I thought, I don't need this, I don't need tutoring, but I think I'll just apply for it, and it was the best decision I ever made, and we'll talk about that. But basically, TRIO really provided me with resources that I needed to be successful, but also a team of professionals who were always supporting me, always had my back, and always were my cheerleaders. Through TRIO, I was able to apply for food stamps. I was on food stamps or SNAP EBT benefits with my family, but when I came to college, the county human resources, Health and Human Services took me off of it because I was no longer living at home, even though that's where I went for my breaks. So I had to get it on my own, and it was very, very challenging. I actually ended up not being able to keep them because my caseworker was on long-term sick leave, and someone was still signing her paperwork, and she was the only contact I had, so couldn't get in touch with her to renew. You have to renew probably, I think, every 6 months, and so I lost them. And but I was on them for a while on my own, and that was due to TRIO's help. I learned how to write resumes and cover letters, which is very important for internships, research, and jobs. And importantly to me, I always had a place to go where I could get something to eat if I needed it. For me, as a first-generation low-income college student, I also had to make a lot of sacrifices that my peers not only did not make, but didn't always understand. I worked 3 part-time jobs while I was in school full-time, and also my senior year I was doing an unpaid internship. A lot of my friends said, "Why do you work so much?" It's not fun, that's for sure. I also had to work really hard to find a lot of the resources. Again, TRIO provided me with a lot of those, but some of them I had to find on my own. And I needed those resources to be successful, but that success came at the cost of having a social life, at being able to participate in student events. I did not get to go to football games as an undergrad. I went to 2. And it was difficult because I couldn't pitch in for tailgating, I couldn't pay for a parking pass, so those were things that became less of a priority. And I needed to make those sacrifices so that I could feed myself and could afford to live, where I was living. College is difficult enough as it is. You're kind of blossoming into adulthood, but it's even harder for students who are like me, who are either first generation or low income or just under-resourced for whatever other reasons. I, again, was really lucky to be in TRIO, but TRIO only serves 260 or so students out of the 35,000 students that go to NC State. And these students need a lot of resources to help them afford interview clothing, which luckily we're doing. I just dropped some off actually earlier in the week. They need resources to pay bills, whether it's utility bills or whether it's student health bills. Even if you have the student insurance, you still need to pay for labs or certain other testing. And I'll never forget when I had to do that, and I was like, I thought my insurance was going to cover this. So I had a $30 or $45 expense that was maybe minor to some of my peers, but to me that's a decent amount of groceries, so it was very difficult. They need resources to help them apply to food stamps or get food from other resources through pantries or food banks. They need help affording parking passes. I just paid $6 for 2 hours to park here, and maybe that's not a lot, but if you don't have a lot of money, then that's something that's coming out of your pocket that you can't afford. Parking passes are several $100s, so sure, you can, use public transportation or, whatever, but this is something I feel like we can probably tackle. They, most importantly, need a really strong support system that includes mentors who understand their situation, and I think a lot of you here fit into that, so it's kind of like me preaching to the choir at this point. But you can share this, need with others in your department or who, work alongside you. But my freshman year, I had an academic advisor who not only did not understand anything about my situation, but also didn't care to understand. Her job was to advise me on classes, and that's all she cared about. But I was very lucky because I had Farrah in my life. Sorry. Farrah really understood what I was going through. Whose problems are invisible by nature. You can't look at someone necessarily, especially a college student, and say they're struggling with food security, they're poor, they're homeless, especially in college, because you're trying your hardest to hide that from your peers because a lot of them do not understand. You can't see that, that pain and that suffering that someone's experiencing. And a lot of under-resourced students are unlike me in that they're not going to tell you that they need help. They're not going to tell you what's going on. At least not, maybe to one person personally, but it took a lot for me to be able to say, this is not my fault, and I'm going to tell people, because there are other people out there like me who are not, in a place where they feel comfortable sharing that. Look at the stigma of, of the general public toward people who receive food stamps or people who are on Medicaid. I was on those programs almost my entire life, and I can tell you that people say nasty things about people who receive those. And that becomes ingrained in you, and you're like, I don't want my peers to think of me as a leech or someone who's lazy, so I'm not going to tell them that. And the students who are most in need, again, are the ones who usually are not going to tell you. So in order to truly help these students, we, as the university, have to be willing to offer help before being asked to. And we have to work to identify resources that the students need. We have a lot of great resources that we just talked about, but there's always more we can do. And, there's also more we can do with the resources we have to make them better or to make them, to where they can serve more students. The university, we have a mantra that's think and do, and I really think this is a situation where the university, faculty, staff, engaged students, community partners have to come together like we're doing today. We have to think about what needs to be done, think about what we can do to meet those, and then do it, and just boots on the ground, I guess. So that's it for me, and I am so thankful that you guys are here today. On behalf of the students, some of the stories you guys shared a little bit ago, you're here trying to help those students, trying to help other students like those, and without you guys, students like me just wouldn't make it, so thank you.